December 17th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest in eastern Belgium. The temperature hovers just below freezing. A thin layer of snow covers the ground, and a low fog clings to the fields and roads around the small Crossroads hamlet of Baugnez, 2.5 miles south of the town of Malmedy. The cold is the kind that seeps through uniforms and settles in the bones. For the men of Battery B, 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion, the morning has been uneventful, a routine movement south from the Hurtgen Forest toward Lignaville. They are artillery observers, not frontline infantry. Their job is to spot targets and direct fire, not to fight tanks. The 30 vehicles in their convoy, jeeps, weapons carriers, and 2.5-ton trucks rumble along the road in a column. The men inside unaware that just miles away, the largest German offensive on the Western Front is already in motion. The day before, on December 16th, Hitler had launched his last desperate gamble, the Battle of the Bulge. A massive German counteroffensive aimed at splitting the Allied armies, capturing the port of Antwerp, and stalling the Allied advance into Germany. The Germans had struck through the Ardennes, a region the Allies considered too difficult for a major armored offensive. They were wrong. By the morning of December 17th, the spearhead of the German attack, Kampfgruppe Peiper, a battle group of the 1st SS Panzer Division, was already driving west, its tanks and armored vehicles pushing through the fog and snow toward the Meuse River. Among the American soldiers in that convoy is Captain Roger L. Mills, 26, from an undisclosed hometown in the United States. He commands Battery B. Also present is Technician 5th Grade John Dandridge Collier, a young soldier serving as an artillery observer. These men and their fellow soldiers are not combat troops in the traditional sense. The 285th Field Artillery Observation Battalion is a support unit. Its job is to locate enemy positions and call in artillery fire. They're armed only with light weapons, nothing that could stop a German tank. The men of Battery B are protected, or so they believe, by the basic rules of war. They are not frontline fighters. They include medical personnel. They are artillery observers, not shock troops. If they encounter the enemy, the expectation, the assumption that underlies every soldier's understanding of the laws of armed conflict is that they would be taken as prisoners of war. They are, by any reasonable measure, non-combatants in the direct sense. They carry no illusion about what surrender means. It means they stop fighting and the enemy stops fighting them. That is how war is supposed to work. But the men approaching from the east are not ordinary soldiers. Kampfgruppe Peiper is an elite Waffen-SS armored unit, composed of approximately 5,000 SS Panzer Grenadiers, backed by 40 new Mark V Panther tanks, 40 Mark IV Panzer tanks, 15 Jagdpanzer IV tank destroyers, 42 King Tiger tanks, and 5 anti-aircraft half-tracks. They are among the most heavily armed and battle-hardened formations in the German military, and they have been given orders that will change everything. Just before noon on December 17th, the two forces converge at the Baugnez Crossroads. The lead elements of Kampfgruppe Peiper spot the American convoy moving south. The German tanks open fire immediately. The Americans are caught completely by surprise. Their lightly armed vehicles are no match for Panzer IV and Panther tanks. Some men escape into the woods. Others are killed in the initial exchange. But the majority, nearly 140 men in total, quickly realize the situation is hopeless. They raise their hands. They surrender. The SS troops search the Americans, relieving them of their personal possessions, watches, rings, wallets, anything of value. Then they march the prisoners into a field adjacent to the crossroads. The Americans are lined up in 8 rows, standing in the cold, unarmed, their hands in the air. What happens next defies any military necessity. The Waffen-SS soldiers open fire with machine guns on the unarmed prisoners. The sound of the guns tears through the cold December air. Men fall where they stand. Those who survive the initial burst are shot again. The SS troops walk among the bodies, firing coup de grace shots into the heads of anyone who appears to still be alive. Some of the survivors recall hearing laughter from the German soldiers as they killed the Americans. A few of the prisoners managed to flee into the surrounding woods. Others play dead, lying motionless among the corpses, praying the SS men will not notice them. When the Germans finally leave the site, at least 84 American soldiers are dead. Their bodies lie in the snow, scattered across the farmer's field at the Crossroads. More than 40 Americans survive the massacre, either by escaping into the forest or by pretending to be dead long enough for the Germans to move on. They will carry the memory of what they saw for the rest of their lives. Asterisk, this is why we tell these stories. Because 84 men died in a field in Belgium, and the world deserves to know their names, their faces, and what was done to them. Subscribe to this channel to ensure these stories are never forgotten. Asterisk. The survivors who escaped the killing field make their way through the woods and fields, moving cautiously, knowing that SS patrols are everywhere. By mid-afternoon on December 17th, the first of them reached the town of Malmedy, which is still in American hands. They are wounded, frozen, and in shock. Some are bleeding from multiple gunshot wounds. They tell their story to the first American officers they find. The news travels up the chain of command with the speed that only atrocity can generate. By the evening of December 17th, the first reports reach division headquarters. By December 18th, the news has reached the highest levels of American command in the European theater. The Americans have been fighting the Germans for over 2 years, but this is different. This is not a battlefield death. This is a massacre. 84 unarmed prisoners of war, shot down in cold blood in a farmer's field after they had surrendered. The discovery of the SS crime leads to a concerted manhunt by U.S. military authorities. The names begin to circulate. Kampfgruppe Peiper, the 1st SS Panzer Division, SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper. The unit is identified. The perpetrators are known. Now, they must be found. The reports reach the office of the American commander responsible for the sector. He reads the casualty figures. He reads the survivor statements. He reads them again. The room is quiet. The only sound is the crackle of the stove and the rustle of paper. He sets the report down on his desk. He looks at the number again. 84. He speaks. His voice is calm, controlled. The angrier he is, the quieter he becomes. These men surrendered. They were lined up in a field, and they were shot. He does not shout. He does not need to. The facts are enough. The facts carry all the weight. Find them, he says. Find every single one of them. The order goes out. The hunt begins. The American military machine, which had been focused on breaking through the German lines and ending the war, now has a second mission. Find the men of Kampfgruppe Peiper and bring them to justice. The investigation is methodical. The U.S. Army tracks down approximately 400 members of the Waffen-SS unit. They are taken to a prison in Schwabisch Hall, near the German city of Stuttgart. From December 1945 to April 1946, U.S. Army war crimes investigators interrogate the prisoners, gathering evidence and confessions. The prosecutors build their case methodically, piece by piece. They interview survivors, men like Kenneth F. Ahrens, 22, from Erie, Pennsylvania, who testifies about what he saw and what was done to his comrades. They gather physical evidence from the site, the spent shell casings, the bodies still frozen in the snow, the personal effects stripped from the dead. They compile the names of the dead, one by one. Sergeant Alfonso J. Stabulis, 22, from Plymouth, Pennsylvania. Private William J. Dunbar, 20, from Penn Yen, New York. Private First Class Carl B. Fry, whose body was found in the field. Corporal William Howard Moore. Technician 4th Grade Alan Moore Lucas. Second Lieutenant Solomon S. Goffman, born in 1917. Private First Class David McDonald Murray. The list goes on. 84 names. 84 stones in a memorial wall that will one day stand near the crossroads where they died. The U.S. prosecutors determined that Peiper's unit was responsible for killing some 350 unarmed American soldiers and approximately 100 Belgian civilians over the course of the Ardennes offensive. The massacre at Baugnez was not an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern, a series of atrocities committed by the same unit in the days before and after December 17th. 74 of the SS men are selected to stand trial. They are transported to the former Dachau concentration camp, where U.S. military tribunals are holding war crimes trials. On May 16, 1946, the trial of the 74 SS members begins in Dachau, Germany. The defendants include the highest-ranking officers of Kampfgruppe Peiper, SS-Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, himself, as well as SS-Obergruppenführer Joseph Sepp Dietrich, the commander of the 6th SS Panzer Army. All of the defendants are charged with violation of the laws and usages of war and with deliberately participating in the killing, shooting, and torturing of U.S. soldiers and unarmed civilians. The prosecution argues that the murders were premeditated, part of a Nazi conspiracy to wage a ruthless campaign against Allied forces and civilians. The defense offers a different argument, that the killings occurred in the heat of battle, that the SS soldiers were confused, that it was a mistake. The survivors of the massacre testify. They describe the surrender. They describe being lined up in the field. They describe the machine guns opening fire. They describe the sound of the SS troops laughing as they killed the Americans. They describe playing dead among their fallen comrades, praying not to be noticed, waiting for the Germans to leave. The courtroom is silent as they speak. One of the survivors stands before the court. He does not shout. He does not weep. His voice is calm, controlled, the voice of a man who has already survived the worst thing that will ever happen to him. He looks at the men in the dock. He names them. He describes what they did. You knew exactly what you were doing, he says. You knew we had surrendered. You knew we were unarmed. And you shot us anyway. The words hang in the air. There is no defense against them. On July 16, 1946, the verdict is read. All 73 defendants are convicted. 43 are sentenced to death by hanging. 22 are sentenced to life imprisonment. The remainder receive sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years. The court has spoken. Justice has been done. The bodies of the 84 American soldiers lay in the snow at the Baugnez Crossroads for nearly a month. The area had become a no-man's land, caught between the advancing German lines and the defending American positions. It was not until January 14, 1945, nearly 4 weeks after the massacre, that American forces were able to recover the bodies and give them a proper burial. Today, the American flag flies over the Malmedy Memorial about 100 meters from where the killings took place. A memorial wall holds 84 flat stones, each bearing the name of a soldier who died in that field. A plaque reads, "To the memory." The words are simple. They do not need to say more. The families of the dead received the news in the weeks and months that followed. A mother in Pennsylvania learned that her son, Sergeant Alfonso J. Stabulis, would not be coming home. A father in New York learned that his 20-year-old son, Private William J. Dunbar, had been killed in action in Belgium. A wife, somewhere in the United States, learned that her husband, Captain Roger L. Mills, had been murdered after surrendering. None of the 43 death sentences from the Malmedy Massacre trial were ever carried out. Over the following decade, the sentences were commuted, reduced, and eventually all of the prisoners were released. By December 1956, every single one of the SS men convicted of the massacre had been set free. The last casualty of the Malmedy Massacre was justice. But the memory of what happened at the Baugnez Crossroads endures. The survivors, men like Harold Billow, the last known survivor of the massacre, who died in 2022 at the age of 99, spent their lives telling the story, ensuring that the 84 men who died in that field would not be forgotten. The crossroads at Baugnez is quiet now. The tanks are gone. The machine guns are silent. The fog still rolls across the fields in December, and the cold still seeps through the bones of anyone who stands there too long. But the stones remain. The names remain. The story remains. 84 unarmed Americans surrendered at a crossroads in Belgium. They were lined up in a field, and they were shot. The men who did it were tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. That justice, however imperfect, stands as a testament to one truth, that even in the chaos of war, some lines cannot be crossed without consequence. These stories deserve to be remembered. They deserve to be documented. They deserve to be told right. Subscribe to this channel to ensure that the men who died at Baugnez and every soldier who has ever fallen in the service of their country are never forgotten.